Imagine a world where nearly every major conflict, from the Middle East to Eastern Europe and the Asia-Pacific, shares one consistent pattern. It is not about who fired the first shot, nor who suffers the most. The pattern is the presence of the United States. The question is no longer whether the United States is involved. The real question is why it is almost never absent. And more importantly, whether that presence truly brings stability or quietly sustains global instability. Stay until the end, because this is not an emotional attack on a single nation. This is an examination of how global power operates today and why the world feels increasingly unsafe despite being protected by a global superpower. Since the end of World War II, the United States has positioned itself as the dominant global force. With Europe devastated and much of the world in economic collapse, America led the construction of a new international order. Institutions, alliances, and financial systems were shaped around its influence. From that moment on, global security ceased to be neutral and became closely tied to Washington's definition of order and threat. When one country assumes responsibility for global stability, every regional crisis becomes its concern. Local conflicts are rarely allowed to remain local. Ukraine becomes a global geopolitical battlefield. Gaza becomes a test of American credibility in the Middle East. The Red Sea, Taiwan, and the South China Sea are no longer just strategic regions, but symbols of power competition. The United States consistently frames its involvement in moral language: democracy, human rights, international security. Yet in practice, these principles are applied selectively. Violations by adversaries are condemned loudly. Violations by strategic allies are met with restraint, justification, or silence. This inconsistency fuels global skepticism and erodes the moral authority the United States claims to uphold. Beyond ideology lies a more uncomfortable reality. Global conflict is also economic. The United States hosts the largest defense industry in the world. Rising tensions translate into weapons contracts, expanded military budgets, and sustained profit cycles. This does not mean the United States creates every conflict, but it does mean the existing system benefits from prolonged instability rather than swift resolution. Paradoxically, American involvement intended to deter war often expands it. Military support hardens positions. Proxy wars replace diplomacy. Conflicts that could be contained escalate into long-term crises, with civilian populations paying the highest price. What is increasingly evident is that resistance to this role is growing, not only abroad, but within the United States itself. More Americans question endless foreign entanglements, while domestic issues remain unresolved. Traditional allies are recalibrating their dependence, signaling that trust in American global leadership is no longer unconditional. The world is moving toward a multipolar reality. Emerging powers assert influence. Countries across the global south reject being forced into binary choices. In this environment, constant American involvement risks accelerating global fragmentation rather than preventing it. So the final question is not simply why the United States appears in every major conflict. The deeper and more unsettling question is whether a world dominated by a single power can truly be stable, or whether lasting peace requires a global order no longer built on unilateral dominance. How that question is answered will shape whether future conflicts become rarer or more frequent, more expansive, and far harder to stop.